If you've never had your childhood itemized and billed like a bad Airbnb stay, congratulations, you're already doing better than me. The day I paid off my student loans, I didn't throw a party. I didn't buy myself anything fancy. I didn't even post about it online, because it didn't feel like a win. It felt like standing in an empty room after a storm. Everything was quiet. But nothing felt safe yet. It had taken me 6.5 years, 3 jobs, a ramen-based diet, and a mattress that left a spring-shaped dent in my spine. My bank account hovered in the "please don't look at me" zone for most of my 20s. But I made it. Alone. No help from my family. No. "We've got your back" moments. Just me, my spreadsheet titled Debt Monster, and a coffee maker that cried harder than I did. So when that final payment cleared and I stared at the $0 balance, I expected something. Relief, maybe? A tear. A single slow clap from the universe. Instead, I got an email. Subject line: "Rebalance of our support." At first, I thought it was spam. The phrasing felt off like a weird customer service reply. I was expecting it to be a receipt from my student loan provider. But no. It was from my mom. Her real email, the one with the cringy signature line that said, "Family is forever red heart except during football games." It was only 3 paragraphs. Paragraph 1. Congratulations on paying off your loans. We're proud of the independence we taught you. Paragraph 2. That said, your father and I have calculated the total amount we spent raising you: housing, food, school, transportation, etc. We believe $214,000 is a reasonable estimate. Paragraph 3. Please remit payment within 90 days. A payment plan is available upon request. No joke. My parents inged me. For childhood. There was an attachment, a PDF labeled Finalized Family Ledger. And yes, it had a logo. 2 shaking hands over a $sign, like a mafia invoice made in Canva. I opened it, and right there in neat Times New Roman: diapers, EST 6,000 units at $0, 26 EA, $1,560. Electricity child usage, $8,400. Hot water for baths, $3,280. Hot water for baths. Apparently, cleanliness wasn't next to godliness, it was next to bankruptcy. Groceries child share, $29,300. Birthday parties, $4,950. Furniture wear and tear due to child use, $1,100. That one broke me a little. They charged me depreciation for sitting on a couch. There was even family Netflix account, 2009 to 2015, $612. Because nothing says emotional warmth like billing your kid for reruns of SpongeBob. By the time I got to Christmas gifts and vehicle gas for soccer practice, I just stopped reading. My brain couldn't take it. 3 full pages. Itemized. Labeled. Signed. And at the bottom? "We trust you will do the honorable thing, as repayment reflects gratitude and personal growth." Gratitude. Like I was late paying off a loan instead of, being born into their house without a choice. I sat there in the blue light of my busted phone screen, not mad. Not sad. Just hollow. Because the saddest part? It didn't surprise me. This wasn't out of character. It was just the most extreme version of a pattern I'd lived with my entire life. My parents always treated affection like it was conditional. If I brought home straight A's, I got a hug and takeout. If I got a B- in math, I got the "we're not mad, just very concerned about your future" speech. When I made the honor roll, Dad told me not to get cocky. Meanwhile, my older brother Kyle once failed Spanish 3 semesters in a row and got a used truck for trying his best. I wasn't the golden child. I wasn't even bronze. I was the receipt. And apparently, they wanted change. That night I didn't sleep. I just sat at my kitchen table, staring at the invoice, trying to process how my parents managed to turn parenthood into a business transaction. No love. No pride. Just debt. And somewhere, underneath the confusion and disbelief and bone-deep hurt, a part of me started to feel something else. A slow burning anger. Not loud. Not explosive. But steady. And growing. I didn't reply to the email. Not the next day. Not the next week. Not even after the second friendly reminder, payment due. That came exactly 10 days later, like they were following up on a missed Amazon package instead of invoicing me for life. Instead, I went for a walk. Which sounds peaceful, but really just meant pacing 5 times around the block in sweatpants, muttering to myself like a man debating the laws of gravity. Because I couldn't stop replaying the same thought. What kind of parents keep a running total? And not just mentally. No, this was printed, tabulated, and formatted with bold lines and Excel color shading. At first, I thought maybe it was some twisted prank. But then I remembered who I was dealing with. See, growing up, my parents always framed love like a transaction. Nothing was ever given without a receipt. My mom used to say, "We're not made of money," as if I was asking for diamonds and not poster board for a school project. My dad once handed me a birthday card with no cash inside and said, "You're old enough to appreciate the sentiment now." That was my 10th birthday. But Kyle? Oh, Kyle got the deluxe package. When Kyle wanted to join travel baseball, they bought him a $300 bat, a private hitting coach, and a monogrammed duffel bag. So he looked professional. When I wanted to audition for the school play, they told me the arts don't pay bills and suggested I try tennis instead because at least that could get you a scholarship. Spoiler, I hate tennis. Always have. Nothing makes you feel more alone than chasing a ball someone else hit at your face while your dad shouts, "Move your feet!" from the sidelines. But Kyle was different. He wrecked his car at 17. Boys will be boys. I missed curfew by 10 minutes? Grounded for a week in a 45-minute lecture about consequences. By the time I left for college, a state school I only got into thanks to academic sweat and a 4.3 GPA, I knew exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy. Not the favorite. Not even the underdog. Just the investment with a bad return rate. So I left. Moved out, moved on, got my own job, my own bank account, and my own ramen-stained microwave. I didn't ask them for a dime. Not for textbooks, rent, medical bills, nothing. And I never heard a complaint. In fact, they seemed proud. Independent, they'd say at family events. Didn't need a thing from us. They loved telling that story. Made them look noble. Generous, even. The parents who taught him to stand on his own. But apparently, now that I had finally done that, now that I wasn't just standing but running full speed toward an actual future, suddenly they were holding out a hand for change. Like I'd been living on loan this whole time. That night, I pulled out a shoebox I hadn't touched in years. It was filled with old report cards, faded birthday cards, participation ribbons from events no one came to watch. One card, from my 16th birthday, had a single sentence in my dad's handwriting. "We're proud of the man you're becoming. Just remember, nothing in life is free." At 16, I thought it was motivational. Now it felt like a disclaimer. Like they'd meant it literally. Nothing in life is free. Especially not me. I held that card for a long time, rereading the same words until they blurred. Until I couldn't tell if I was angry or just tired of trying to pretend this wasn't who they'd always been. And for the first time in years, I let myself wonder something I'd been too afraid to say out loud. What if I was never really loved, just tolerated? It was a Wednesday when Kyle texted me. No greeting. No preamble. Just this. "Mom said you're being weird about something. What's going on?" We hadn't spoken in almost a year. Last time we did, he spent the whole call explaining how the housing market was rigged against responsible homeowners like him. Which was rich, considering our parents helped him with his down payment and still paid for his cell plan. I stared at the message for a solid minute, then locked my phone and went back to eating my dinner, a grilled cheese that had seen better cheese. 15 minutes later, another message came in. "She said you're upset about the email?" Bro, it's not that deep. They're just trying to teach you something. Teach me? Right. Like this was some kind of financial parable. I half expected a follow-up text explaining how billing your adult child was the 11th commandment. But still, I didn't answer. Because I knew exactly what was happening. I'd seen it before. This was the Kyle cleanup protocol. Step 1, downplay the issue. Step 2, blame me for overreacting. Step 3, guilt trip me into apologizing for making waves in the family group chat. Except I hadn't even said anything in the group chat. Because, surprise, I wasn't in it anymore. They'd removed me months ago after I ruined Thanksgiving by refusing to leave early so Kyle's family could have the dining room. You know, the one in my aunt's house. But I digress. I sat with Kyle's texts for a while before finally replying. They sent me an invoice for $214,000. For being raised. He replied with just 3 letters. LOL. That was it. No follow-up. No. Wait, seriously? Just LOL, the textual equivalent of shrugging off a grenade. 5 minutes later, another message. You're lucky, man. They didn't charge interest. And that's when something in me cracked. Not snapped, not yet, but cracked. Like a hairline fracture running through a wall you've been told is fine, just cosmetic. Because in that moment, Kyle wasn't just dismissing the invoice. He was dismissing me. My entire childhood. My exhaustion. My sense of betrayal. And the worst part? He didn't even know it. Kyle had grown up thinking our parents were normal. That they were strict but fair. That being handed everything and still feeling like you earned it was a birthright. He didn't remember when Dad forgot my high school graduation because the game ran late. He didn't see Mom roll her eyes every time I mentioned wanting to study creative writing. Kyle lived in a world where love was loud and easy and automatic. I lived in a world where I earned every ounce of approval through silence, performance, and being less of a problem than I was the week before. I tossed my phone on the couch and sat in the dark for a while, letting the weight of all of it settle in. Then, because I'm apparently a glutton for punishment, I opened the PDF again. And I started scrolling, slower this time. There, halfway down page 2, was a new line I hadn't noticed before. College recommendation letter, time and emotional labor, $150. It was Dad's letter. 2 paragraphs. Generic. Half spelled my major wrong. They billed me for it. I sat back and laughed. The kind of laugh you don't even hear at first, just a breath that escapes when you realize you've officially hit the edge of logic and dipped a toe into madness. They really thought this was normal. And Kyle? He thought I should be grateful. The next day, I got a formal-looking email from my mom with the subject line. Updated agreement for review. Not. Hey. Not. Let's talk. Just corporate coldness in Arial font. Inside was a PDF labeled Family Repayment Plan, Adjusted, and a short note. We understand the initial amount may have been overwhelming. In the spirit of compromise, we're offering a reduced lump sum option of $147,000 if paid within 30 days. You know what's wild? I almost respected the audacity. A 30% discount like I was buying clearance patio furniture and not, my childhood. The document was 2 pages. It laid out payment windows, preferred methods of transfer. And this part actually made me laugh. Non-refundable processing fees. They charged a processing fee for being my parents. I half expected them to throw in an early bird special and a toaster if I wired the money by Friday. Still, I didn't respond. I just screenshotted the email and sent it to my friend Natalie, not my sister, God no, but the one friend who'd been through enough therapy to smell narcissistic parenting through Wi-Fi. She called me instantly. Are they serious? She asked. They even discounted it. I said. Real generous, right? Natalie was silent for a beat. Then, you do realize what this is, right? A delusional money grab? Sure. But also, punishment. You paid off your loans. You proved you don't need them. That's power they can't stand. I'd never thought of it like that before. But the second she said it, something clicked. This wasn't about money. It was about control. Always had been. My parents had spent years telling people how proud they were that I was independent, as long as I didn't actually act like it. The moment I stopped asking them for anything, they lost their grip. And now, they were trying to reestablish it, with terms and conditions. As if my existence came with a subscription fee. Later that night, Kyle called. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. And again. Finally, I picked up on the fourth ring because I was tired of hearing my own ringtone. Dude, he said immediately. They're freaking out. Are they? You could have just said no instead of ignoring everyone. They didn't ask, Kyle. They interest me. Well, yeah, but it's not like they actually expect you to pay the full thing. Oh, only $147,000 now. What a deal. He sighed. You're being dramatic. You're being woefully blind. There was a pause. A real one. And then Kyle, in the tone he always used when he wanted to sound wise, said, Look, man, you were expensive. We both were. At least you didn't end up in rehab. That costs way more than your college books. And there it was. The classic Kyle deflection. Somehow, me existing, me eating food, taking baths, attending public school, was a burden. But his 4-month stint at the Sunrise Recovery Ranch was just a hiccup. Tell Mom and Dad I'm not paying, I said flatly. You sure you want to burn that bridge? Feels more like I'm finally acknowledging it was never built right. He didn't respond. Just hung up. And for once, that silence felt like a win. I didn't sleep much after that call with Kyle. Not from rage. I'd already burned through that. What I felt was worse, that numb, floating kind of exhaustion. Like I'd been treading water for so long that my limbs stopped fighting, and I started sinking. And still, I couldn't stop thinking about that damn invoice. They really believed I owed them for living. For being born. For growing up. For taking baths, eating food, and watching Finding Nemo on their family Netflix account. That was what they thought I should reimburse. I opened the email again, not because I needed to, but because I couldn't not. There it was, plain as ever. The attachment. The passive-aggressive tone. The twisted idea that sending me a bill for childhood expenses somehow made them smart, logical, and in control. And maybe that's what cut the deepest. They weren't joking. They were proud of this. Somewhere in their heads, they really believed they were setting an example. Teaching me a lesson about accountability. As if I hadn't spent the last 7 years working triple shifts, turning down vacations, and living off dollar store pasta just to pay back loans they refused to help with. As if I hadn't already done what they always said they wanted from me, make it on my own. But I had. And that terrified them. Because if I was truly independent, that meant they couldn't guilt me anymore. Couldn't dangle scraps of affection over my head in exchange for obedience. Couldn't call the shots from a distance and pretend it was parenting. They were losing control. And the invoice? It was their last shot. At 3:12 a.m., I sat down at my tiny kitchen table, the one I'd bought secondhand and refinished with YouTube tutorials and too much sandpaper, and I clicked forward. Sent the email and both attachments to someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Tessa Nguyen, J.D. Tessa had helped me once before, a shady landlord situation involving a stolen deposit and a mysterious cleaning fee for a ceiling fan that didn't exist. She was sharp, relentless, and had the kind of voice that could make IRS agents flinch. The message was short. Hey Tessa, hope you're well. Got something wild I need eyes on. Please confirm whether this is legally enforceable, or just straight up bonkers. I hit send. Closed the laptop. And for the first time in weeks, I slept. Hard. The next afternoon, Tessa called. Okay, she said without a hello. What the actual hell? That bad? They created a family brand to invoice you for being their child. I noticed the logo. It's not legally enforceable. It's not even emotionally enforceable. You were a minor. They had a legal obligation to raise you, and a moral one, unless they missed that part in Parenting 101. So I don't owe them anything? Not a cent. But if you want to respond, I've got ideas. I hesitated. Not because I was scared, but because a part of me didn't want to get dirty. Didn't want to become the person who fights back with legalese and cold language. But the truth was, I'd been swallowing their manipulation my whole life. I'd tried being the bigger person. I'd tried staying quiet, letting it roll off, giving them the benefit of the doubt. And all it ever got me was another invoice. Let's draft something, I said. Tessa didn't even pause. I'll send a first version tonight. I ended the call and just sat there for a while, letting the quiet settle in. And that's when I realized this wasn't about debt. It was about finally writing my own terms. Tessa's draft landed in my inbox late that night. Subject: family repayment request. No frills. No fire. Just clean legal language that cut like glass. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Dyer, this letter is in response to your recent invoice regarding financial reimbursement for the cost of raising your son, Landon. As there was no prior agreement, contract, or legal documentation outlining repayment terms for basic parental responsibilities, the claim is without merit. We advise ceasing all further attempts to collect on this matter. Continued harassment may result in legal review. Best regards. Tess and Gwyn, ESQ. At the bottom of the email, she added a personal note for me. You didn't start this. You're just drawing a line where they've been crossing it for years. Let me know if they push it. I stared at the message for a while, reading it like it was written in a foreign language, not because I didn't understand, but because it felt unreal. Like this was happening to someone else. Then I hit send. No ceremony. No shaking hands. Just a click. The silence afterward felt heavier than I expected. Not guilt. Not regret. But a kind of echo, like the last word in an argument you'll never reopen. The next morning, I got 2 missed calls from my mom, and a voicemail that started as a sigh and ended in a trembling voice. I just don't understand why you take it to this level, Landon. You always make things harder than they have to be. This wasn't supposed to be confrontational. We were just trying to have a respectful conversation about fairness and values. Right. Because nothing screams respectful like an itemized list of my costs as a child. Then came Dad's call. I didn't answer, but I let the voicemail play while I made coffee. His voice boomed through my busted kitchen speaker like a sermon wrapped in sawdust. So this is what it's come to, huh? Lawyers? You've embarrassed your mother. After everything we gave you. There it was again. Gave. Not raised. Not supported. Not loved. Gave, like I was a failed investment they regretted not pulling out of early. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stared at the ceiling, then at the floor, then back at nothing. And slowly, I started to remember things I hadn't let myself dwell on in years. Like when I was 7 and drew a family picture at school. Everyone had a smile, even the dog. I remember showing it to Mom, beaming with that dumb, raw pride only kids can pull off. She glanced at it and said, "You made your dad's head too big." Then walked away. Or the time I got accepted into my college honors program and Dad said, "Let's see how long that lasts." You don't realize how deep those cuts go until someone tries to invoice you for the band-aids. Later that afternoon, Kyle texted, "Guess you won." They're pissed. Said you lawyered up like a traitor? No punctuation. Just flat judgment from a guy who never had to stand up to anything except his own mirror. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned my phone face down and went for a walk. No music. No destination. Just the sound of my shoes on concrete and the strange, slow realization that I felt lighter. Not happy. Not healed. But lighter. Because for once, I wasn't explaining myself. I wasn't begging to be heard. I wasn't trying to earn a seat at a table I'd been billed for. I'd said no. And in my world, that was new. That was huge. That was freedom. 3 weeks passed. No calls. No texts. No surprise envelopes. No passive-aggressive. Just checking in. Emails wrapped in guilt and glitter. The silence was so loud it had a shape. At first, I braced for it. Every morning I checked my phone expecting a new guilt trap, a Bible verse, a forwarded article about honoring your parents, or a text from Kyle about how Dad's blood pressure is high again, and it's probably because of what you did. But there was nothing. Just quiet. And weirdly, that made me more anxious. Because when your family operates like a landmine field, silence doesn't mean peace, it means someone's loading the next round. But slowly, I adjusted. I walked more. Not stress walks, actual walks. I noticed trees. I bought honey at a farmer's market from a woman who let me sample 6 kinds. I laughed more, real laughs. Even my apartment felt lighter, like it finally belonged to me and not the shame-soaked ghost of every call I took in its kitchen. Then came week 4. And with it, the first shift. I checked my mailbox, bills, coupons, and one plain white envelope. No return address. No stamp. Just my name, scribbled in large block letters like a ransom note. Inside, one sheet of wide-ruled notebook paper, torn edges, sharply written. You may think you won, but this family doesn't forget. I laughed. Loudly. Right on the sidewalk. A neighbor with her dog gave me side-eye. I just waved the letter and said, "Long story." And it was. A long, stupid story about people who tried to guilt me into paying back my own childhood, and got mad when I didn't. I snapped a picture and sent it to Tessa. Her response: "Cute. Tell them to try stamps next time if they want to cosplay as grown-ups." But that wasn't the big moment. That came 2 days later. Late at night. I was scrolling Facebook, trying to lull myself to sleep, when a new message popped up. Aunt Carla. Dad's sister. The one who moved to Oregon after the infamous lake house incident. Never explained, never discussed. We hadn't spoken since I was maybe 11. Her message said, "Hey Landon. Just heard what's been going on. I know we haven't talked much, but I've seen your parents pull this on someone before. If you ever want to talk, really talk, I'm here." I stared at the screen. Wait. They've done this before? I typed. You mean they've sent invoices before? Her reply came quick. Not exactly. But the control, the guilt, the obsession with fairness. They tried to pull similar things on me when I left. Emotional blackmail. I cut contact for my sanity. Looks like they've leveled up since then. You're not crazy. You're not ungrateful. You're just awake. I sat there with that. Not healed. Not vindicated. But finally, seen. We messaged for over 2 hours. She told me stories I wish I'd known years ago. How my dad had always needed to dominate every room. How my mom mastered the art of weaponized silence. How Carla once got written out of a family will for disrespect, after speaking up at a reunion. How it took her 10 years to stop apologizing for choosing peace. And then she said, "You're not the first. But you might be the first one to say no while still standing." When I put down my phone, I felt something I hadn't felt since this whole thing started. Clear. The next message from my parents came 2 months later. An email. Short. Cold. Subject: We'd like to put this behind us. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just, we were disappointed by how you handled things. However, we're willing to move on as a family, if you are. Let us know if you're ready to be civil. That word, civil, sat in my chest like a brick. Because they didn't mean civil. They meant silent. They meant compliant. They meant, pretend we didn't do anything wrong, and we'll let you eat at the same table again. I didn't reply. Instead, I marked the email as unread and dragged it to a folder labeled Receipts, right next to the invoice. Funny how that word works both ways. 3 weeks later, I got invited to a barbecue at Aunt Carla's. She'd flown back into town for the first time in years and sent me a casual, no pressure, text. Just some grilled stuff, good people, zero drama. I went. And when I got there, I saw something I never expected. Cousins I hadn't seen in a decade. Laughing. Telling stories. A couple of them even cracked jokes about my dad, in that half-loving, half-fed-up way only family can get away with. Carla handed me a soda and said, "Surprise! You're not alone." Turns out, I wasn't the only one they'd written off. I was just the only one who fought back with paperwork. We spent hours sharing stories. I learned more about my family that day than I had in 25 years. And the wildest part? I didn't feel broken. Or bitter. Or even angry. I just felt done. Like I'd stepped off a train I didn't realize I was allowed to exit. About a month after that, I checked my mail and found another letter. But this one had a return address, my parents'. Neatly typed. No mystery this time. Inside was a single page. Just one line. "Are you really going to throw away your family over money?" No greeting. No signature. I folded the letter back up, slid it into a drawer, and wrote one final email, not to them, but to myself. The subject line? No over boundaries. Because here's the truth. I didn't throw them away. I just stopped paying to be kept.